Long before Samus Aran's time, the galaxy was shaped by the bird-like Chozo, an advanced civilization that spread to many worlds. On SR-388, a Chozo scientific colony from the Thoha tribe encountered a horrific parasitic life form known as the X-parasite. To combat this existential threat, they bioengineered a new organism called the Metroid, a super predator designed to specifically prey on the X. Though we can see exactly where this would lead, it's not like they would be the first people in history to do something like this, getting rid of one problem by creating a larger one. To try and defeat the X-parasite, the Chozo harnessed a powerful energy resource, Ion, in order to create the Metroids, intending for them to stay in a controllable, larval state, just powerful enough to keep the X in check. But the Metroids began to naturally mutate into more aggressive forms beyond the Chozo's control. As the Metroids multiplied beneath SR-388's surface, the Chozo found they could no longer contain them. The Thoha scientists attempted desperate measures, even flooding underground chambers with acid to try and seal away the Metroids and the X-parasites. Some Chozo warriors heroically stayed behind to hold the Metroids back during this sealing process, and fearing the situation was spiraling out of control, the colony sent out a distress signal for aid. This plea was answered by a faction of militant Chozo, the Makan tribe, who was led by the warlike general Ravenbeak. Instead of helping, Ravenbeak's forces massacred the peaceful Chozo and intended to seize the Metroid project for themselves. They only spared the Thoha elder Quiet Robe, who needed to be kept alive and help control the Metroids, since the Thoha clan had some innate ability to tame these creatures. Ravenbeak departed with the Metroid research data, and likely some specimens, leaving SR-388 devastated and the surviving X-parasites quarantined deep below the surface. This ancient betrayal all but extinguished the Chozo presence in the galaxy, setting the stage for the struggles to come. Though on other colony worlds, the Chozo legacy endured. One of these worlds was Zebes, where Chozo settlers built advanced facilities like the underground chambers of Brinstar, Norfair, and Torain. But even here they eventually withdrew, leaving behind their technology, including the future power suit. The AI construct Mother Brain was originally created by the Chozo on Zebes to serve as their central computer, running all their systems and maintaining peace. But eventually it would be co-opted by evil forces. And by the time the Galactic Federation arose, the Chozo race had mysteriously faded from prominence. Though of course their actions like creating the Metroids and the scattering of technological artifacts across different planets would profoundly influence the events of the modern era. Samus Aran was born on the human Earth colony K2L, where her parents Rodney and Virginia Aran worked as civilian miners. But when she was just 3 years old, the space pirate forces, led by the fearsome draconic alien Ridley, attacked K2L to steal their fuel crystals, specifically the mineral alfluorite. The peaceful colony was ravaged. Samus's mother died protecting her toddler from Ridley's wrath, and her father heroically sacrificed himself by detonating the pirates' fuel stock, destroying the pirate ship but at the cost of his own life. This explosion even injured Ridley, forcing the pirates to withdraw, but it left K2L utterly destroyed. Samus was the sole survivor of this massacre, saved only by hiding during this chaos. But as luck would have it, a Chozo exploration vessel had only recently left this colony, and they were able to pick up on the colony's distress call, though by the time they returned, they found only ruins. Among that wreckage, the elderly Chozo sage Old Bird discovered young Samus alive and took pity on this orphan child. The elders decided to raise Samus as one of their own. They brought her to the planet Zebes, where she was cared for by Old Bird and Chozo scientist Grey Voice. But this planet's environment was harsh and poisonous to an unaltered human. There was no way that she could survive long in the planet's ecosystem without intervention. And so Samus's life would change from this point on at a genetic level. The Chozo infused Samus with their own DNA, granting her enhanced physique and abilities to adapt to these hostile conditions. This mixing of two species was in part so successful because she was only 3 years old. She would take incredibly well to this, and almost the entirety of her biological development would be with this infused DNA. And they also gifted her a powerful biomechanical armor, the first power suit, which was said to have been developed with Mother Brain's assistance, before she went dark, of course. With human and Chozo blood flowing through her veins and secured behind the metal of this advanced armor, Samus gained abilities far beyond those of either species. More than superhuman or super Chozo, she was far more than the sum of all of these parts, and they hoped she could be their redeemer. Throughout her childhood and adolescence, Samus was rigorously trained by the Chozo to become a warrior without equal, though restricted mainly to the Brinstar and Criteria regions during training, and she learned a warrior's discipline, combat techniques, and survival skills under these adoptive elders. By her early teens, Samus had blossomed into a formidable fighter often called the Protector of the Galaxy, a title the Chozo themselves once held, but they passed it on to her in faith that she would carry on their legacy. At around 14, Samus said goodbye to her Chozo family on Zebes and entered Galactic Federation service. She initially joined the Federation Police and then the Federation Army, where she served under Commander Adam Malkovich, a stern but respected officer who became her human mentor figure. Samus's independent spirit was notorious, and even her superiors would at least semi-jokingly talk to her as a superior, saying things like, "Any objections, lady?" knowing they might as well get her input on a plan as quickly as possible, because she would be sure to voice it or act on it soon. But Samus and Commander Adam had true camaraderie, despite all the layers of military formalities. But after many years, Samus found military life constraining.
Adam Malkovich, a general in the Galactic Federation Army. Not only a trusted confidant, but also my former superior officer. Yes, there was a time when I was enrolled in the Galactic Federation Army. And then I was young and inexperienced. As the result of a certain incident, I left Adam's command and set out on my path as a solitary bounty hunter.
She eventually left Federation forces and became a freelance bounty hunter or mercenary, pursuing justice on her own terms, not being prevented from doing what you knew was right just because of some bureaucratic red tape. And she would often still cooperate with the Federation whenever their interests aligned. As for all the Federation's flaws, in general they were the good guys, and accurately identified the bad guys, even if you needed some rogues like Samus to go around the system and pull the trigger themselves. But it was this decision to leave that set the stage for her first solo mission against the space pirates. Sometime in the 2000s, all we know is it's around galactic year 20X5. Decades after the Chozo had seemed to vanish from the galactic community, their former planet Zebes became a stronghold for the space pirates. And this violent clan of raiders and thieves was led by that great AI Mother Brain, as well as the dragon-like Ridley and the reptilian Kraid. The pirates had learned of the existence of Metroids on SR-388 and stole several specimens, intending to weaponize these energy-siphoning creatures. In the original Metroid 1986 storyline, the Galactic Federation tracked the pirates to Zebes and enlisted Samus Aran to infiltrate their base and eliminate this threat. And this mission would be later retold in Metroid Zero Mission, all as her first great test as a lone bounty hunter. Samus landed on Zebes and fought her way through the cavernous regions, from the jungles of Brinstar to the magma-filled Norfair, dismantling the pirate operations. In the depths of Torain, she confronted Mother Brain, the biomechanical overlord controlling Zebes' defenses, which now included swarms of Metroids the pirates had brought from SR-388. In an intense battle, Samus destroyed Mother Brain's life support tank, causing the creature's base to begin a self-destruct sequence. She escaped just in time, or so it seemed. As Samus was trying to leave atmosphere, space pirate forces ambushed her gunship, causing it to crash land back on the planet's surface. Stranded and stripped of her power suit in the wreck, Samus had to infiltrate the nearby space pirate mothership using only her pistol and her training. In the ruins of Chozodia, an ancient temple now occupied by the pirates, Samus discovered a hidden Chozo chamber that tested her and ultimately bestowed upon her a fully powered suit upgrade. Rearmed in her legendary, fully powered suit, Samus stormed the pirate mothership, Battling a mechanized Ridley robot commander, she set the pirate vessel to self-destruct and fled aboard a stolen escape ship just as the mothership was obliterated. The Zebes base was left in ruins and the space pirate threat was temporarily crippled. Samus's Zero mission cemented her reputation as one of the galaxy's greatest warriors. After the Zebes incident, Samus continued working with the Galactic Federation on various assignments. The next major chapter of her career revolved around the substance Phazon, a truly odd, otherworldly mutagen. And this era of her life is chronicled in the Metroid Prime series. According to producer Yoshio Sakamoto, the Prime games are set between the original Zebes mission and the mission to SR-388, seen in Metroid 2. So not long after the events of Zebes, Samus intercepted a distress call from the derelict space pirate frigate Orpheon near the planet Talon 4.
The cosmos. In the vast universe, the history of humanity is but a flash of light from a lone star. The life of a single person should be lost in space and time. But among the stars, there is one light that burns brighter than all others. The light of Samus Aran. Her battles extend beyond her life and etch themselves into history. Here, another chapter of that history will be written.
In Metroid Prime of 2002, she boards the crippled ship to find the crew dead from experiments gone awry. And there she briefly encounters a cybernetically enhanced Meta-Ridley before the frigate crashes to the planet below. Samus then descends to Talon 4, unaware she is stepping into one of the galaxy's greatest mystery. Talon 4 had once been a Chozo colony, but now it had been contaminated by Phazon, this highly toxic, radioactive substance from a meteor that struck the planet decades earlier. As Samus explored ancient Chozo ruins and the pirates' Phazon mines, she discovered Chozo lore carvings that revealed the Chozo knew of a great poison, what we call the Phazon, and they prophesied the arrival of a savior, who Samus realizes must be her. She would have to cleanse this world, while the space pirates were actively mining Phazon and performing twisted experiments to create super soldiers, mutating local fauna and themselves. Samus methodically dismantled the pirates' operations on Talon 4, defeating powerful Phazon-infused creatures and reclaiming lost abilities the Chozo had left for her. In the planet's impact crater from that meteor that brought the Phazon, she would face Metroid Prime, a terrifying abomination born of Phazon. In the final battle, Samus donned the Phazon suit, named thus for how this mysterious force can transform everything from biology to technology. She channels this darkness against its source and manages to kill Metroid Prime. Seeming to end the immediate Phazon infestation. But she did not know at this time that in its death throes, the creature absorbed Samus's Phazon suit and survived as a formless core. After Samus escaped the collapsing crater, a hidden ending showed the core taking on a new humanoid form, Dark Samus, a doppelganger born of Metroid Prime and Phazon. If she was to be the savior of prophecy, this doppelganger was to be the great destroyer of prophecy. As Samus left Talon 4, truly having saved the planet's ecosystem, she felt she had fulfilled the Chozo's prophecy, though of course the Phazon crisis was far from over. Sometime later, the Galactic Federation picked up on a cryptic, telepathic message broadcasting across the Tetra Galaxy. It spoke of an ultimate power. In the Metroid Prime Hunters 2006 side story, Samus is dispatched to the remote Alimbic cluster, intent on seeing if this ultimate power was some sort of weapon. She soon discovers that she is not the only one drawn by this call. 6 rival bounty hunters also converge on the cluster, each seeking the promised power for themselves. Throughout the Alimbic asteroid stations and the planet Alinos, Samus clashes with these hunters, Sylux, Weevil, Noxus, Spire, Candon, and Trace, while uncovering the fate of the long-dead Alimbic civilization. Eventually it becomes clear that the message was a trap, The ultimate power is actually an ancient, purely evil entity named Gorilla, which the Alimbics had sealed in an extra-dimensional prison called the Oubliette, the French word for a secret dungeon or pit where prisoners were to be forgotten. Samus and, indirectly, the other hunters managed to release and then destroy Gorilla, preventing it from escaping the cluster. In the end, Samus and the surviving rival hunters escape as the Oubliette collapses. This mission, while relatively self-contained, introduced Sylux, a vengeful hunter who harbors a particular grudge against Samus and the Federation, a figure who will linger in the background of this saga. But at the end, Samus' success in the Alimbic cluster ensured that Gorilla's ultimate power could not fall into the wrong hands. And then she would be sent to investigate an incident on the planet Aether. In the events of Metroid Prime 2, Echoes from 2004, the Federation frigate GFS Tyr had gone missing, and Samus arrived to find the crew dead, seemingly slaughtered by unknown creatures. Aether had been struck by a Phazon meteor. Realizing that these things were weapons, dubbed Leviathans, this was a sort of organic weaponry, a virus that seemed to be fired at worlds. When these Phazon meteors hit a planet, it would try and spread and completely transform the entire world into just one enormous version of itself, the Phazon's horrific version of reproduction. But Aether was an incredibly unique planet, and this twisted alien source from the Leviathan would interact with the Aether and split this world into two halves, Light Aether and Dark Aether. The once peaceful inhabitants of Aether, the Luminoth, were nearly wiped out by the interdimensional predators known as the Ing, who came from Dark Aether. Samus teamed up with the last Luminoth sentinel, Umos, learning that the Ing had stolen the light of Aether, the energy that sustained this light world dimension. But without it, both halves of the planet would be destroyed. During her quest to restore Aether's planetary energy, Samus frequently crossed into the deadly Dark Aether dimension, fighting possessed troopers, including the fallen GF squad, and the Ing themselves. She was also stalked by Dark Samus, who lived off of the Phazon, and would frequently try to cut down Samus throughout the mission. But in the end, Samus defeated the Emperor Ing and reclaimed all the light energy, collapsing Dark Aether and exterminating the Ing for good. She also seemed to destroy Dark Samus in an explosive Phazon overload, and so with Aether saved and returned to a singular dimension, the grateful Umos and remaining Luminoth entered stasis to recuperate. Samus left the planet after a respectful Luminoth salute, but unbeknownst to her, Dark Samus's essence persisted yet again, quietly regenerating from the Phazon remnants. In Metroid Prime 3, Corruption from 2007, the escalating Phazon crisis comes to a head.
Transmission verified. Greetings, Samus. We welcome you on behalf of the Galactic Federation.
The Galactic Federation became aware that Phazon meteors, the Leviathans, were not random. They were being deliberately sent from some central source, and the Federation enlisted Samus alongside 3 other elite bounty hunters, Rundus, Gore, and Gandrada, to help combat the recent Phazon outbreak. During a Federation briefing, the space pirates launched a surprise assault on the Federation's base at Norion, attempting to crash a Phazon Leviathan into the planet. Samus and her fellow hunters fought to activate Norion's defense cannon, and they succeeded, but not before Dark Samus appeared and corrupted the hunters, including Samus through this potent Phazon exposure. These bounty hunters were able to prevent the Leviathan's impact on Norion, but Samus fell unconscious from this Phazon infection. A whole month would go by, and Samus awoke in a new Phazon-enhanced device. Just as she had once been mixed with alien DNA, this suit was thoroughly altered by Phazon, and it allowed her to safely utilize Phazon in combat through a system dubbed Hyper Mode. The other 3 hunters unfortunately succumbed to their corruption and went missing after deployed to various planets. Samus's new mission was twofold: hunt down the missing hunters who were now under Dark Samus's influence, and destroy the Phazon seeds that had impacted 3 target worlds, Brio, Elysia, and the pirate homeworld. Traveling to each world, Samus battled rampant local Phazon mutations and eventually confronted each of her fellow hunters, who had been turned into deranged, super-powered foes by the Phazon's influence. She was forced to defeat Rundus, Gore, and lastly Gandrada, and as she eventually destroyed each Leviathan seed, she learned more and more about the source of Phazon, the extragalactic planet named Phase, a planet-sized, conscious organism. But now with all 3 seeds neutralized, the Federation launched a final assault directly at Phase, assisted by her ship's AI, which was based on the personality of her now-deceased partner Adam Malkovich. Together they fought through a space pirate armada and arrived at Phase's volatile surface. Here she confronted Dark Samus in this climactic duel inside the core of Phase, which also housed the stolen Federation Aurora unit, AU-313, which had been corrupted to serve as the planet's control brain. The battle was intense as Samus's own Phazon corruption neared critical levels, but ultimately she prevailed, destroying Dark Samus and causing a chain reaction that annihilated Planet Phase entirely. With this source destroyed, all Phazon across the galaxy was rendered inert or vaporized, finally bringing the Phazon crisis to an end. Samus escaped the imploding world and was retrieved by the Federation fleet, but those with a 100% ending would see a mysterious scene showing the bounty hunter Sylux secretly pursuing Samus's gunship in the aftermath. With Phazon purged from the universe and space pirate forces severely weakened, the Galactic Federation moved to mop up the remaining pirate forces. Sometime after Samus's return, the Federation initiated Operation Gollum, a program to deploy mechanized battlesuits controlled by an elite marine unit called the Federation Force. In Metroid Prime Federation Force of 2016, these Marines, with Samus providing occasional support, conducted campaigns in the remote Bermuda system to stamp out pirate outposts. They uncovered a plot by the surviving space pirates to weaponize a Metroid egg, but managed to thwart it, destroying the pirates' Doomseye battleship. But again, if you can see the secret epilogue, a shadowy figure infiltrated a Federation research facility and stole the recovered Metroid specimen. This thief was Sylux, escaping with this newborn Metroid, leaving its protective capsule shattered, implying that Sylux's plans of revenge would involve one of the most terrifying species the galaxy had ever seen. As the years passed and reports of Metroid encounters increased, from Zebes to Talon 4, the Galactic Federation grew increasingly worried, and eventually the Federation leadership concluded that Metroids would need to be made extinct, especially seeing how easily space pirates and others attempted to use them. But when the Federation's own attempts to eliminate the Metroids on SR-388 failed, they again turned to Samus Aran, the one person with a proven track record against this species. Her mission in Metroid 2: Return of Samus, from 1991 and later remade as Samus Returns in 2017, her instructions were simple but with galactic consequence. Travel to SR-388 and exterminate every Metroid on the planet. Arriving on the surface, she journeyed deep through the planet's caverns, hunting down Metroids in their various life cycle stages. Moving through the catacombs, she discovered firsthand that Metroids had multiple evolved forms, from the jellyfish-like infant larva to Alpha, Gamma, Zeta, and the gigantic Queen Metroid, all products of that environment and the Chozo's unintended meddling. One by one, Samus eradicated the creatures, surviving ambushes and the harsh environment, and in the end, deep in the Metroid hatchery, she confronted and killed the massive Queen Metroid, seeming to fulfill her mission of ending an entire species. But in the quiet aftermath of the Queen's defeat, she came upon a single Metroid egg hidden in the Queen's lair. As she approached, the Queen hatched, and an infant Metroid larva emerged. The newborn Metroid immediately imprinted on Samus, treating her as its mother, and perhaps with a mix of motherly urges unique to a heroine, she found herself unable to kill this last surviving Metroid. After a heavy pause, she chooses to spare the Metroid hatchling, recognizing that the baby was innocent and perhaps recalling her own childhood vulnerability. She was looking at this creature that was the lone survivor of some alien attack. Samus had been saved by the Chozo, but the Chozo had created the Metroid and hoped to destroy it, but the Metroid would now be saved by Samus, cradling the life-suckling creature as it peacefully followed her. Samus departed SR-388 with her new adoptee. In the Samus Returns remake, their departure was complicated by a surprise attack from Proteus Ridley, a cybernetically enhanced Ridley who had been tracking her. In this version, she fights off Ridley to protect the baby Metroid, and this great dragon beast would flee grievously wounded. But after leaving this planet, Samus delivered the baby Metroid to the Federation's Space Science Academy, the research station orbiting SR-388, later referred to as Ceres Station. She handed over this last Metroid with hope that scientists could study its energy-producing abilities and use it for the good of galactic civilization. With a bittersweet sense of completion, Samus believed the Metroid scourge was finally over, unaware that this tiny hatchling would soon play a critical role in her own future, and that this single act of mercy would have far-reaching galactic consequences. Samus's intuition that the Metroid hatchling might benefit the galaxy was validated, at least initially. The scientists here studied it, and it did produce tremendous amounts of energy. It was a true hope at organic, clean energy production. But this peaceful research was not to last. In Super Metroid of 1994, shortly after Samus left the station, a distress signal from Ceres brought her rushing back. She arrived to find the research lab in ruins and all personnel dead. The baby Metroid was gone, stolen by Ridley, who was still alive and now fully regenerated or reconstructed after his injuries on SR-388. There was a brief confrontation at the station, but this pirate leader who had killed her parents and had now stolen her child. This dragon fled the damaged Ceres station, which then self-destructed, forcing Samus to flee. She tracked Ridley's flight path to a familiar destination, Zebes. The space pirates had secretly rebuilt their operation on Zebes' surface and in its deep tunnels, turning it once more into a fortress. As she descended into the planet, retracing some of her old battlegrounds, it became clear that the pirates, under the revived Mother Brain's command, intended to clone the baby Metroid and rebuild their army of bioweapons. Samus fought through the defenses, encountering both new dangers and old enemies resurrected. The gigantic reptilian Kraid may himself have been a clone of that one killed in the first Zebes mission, and then Ridley awaited her. She fought through the haunted wrecked ship inhabited by Phantom in the depths of Meridia where Dragon lurked, all to penetrate Terrain, where the reanimated Mother Brain resided. In this final chamber, Samus found the Metroid hatchling, now grown to an enormous size due to the pirates' experiments. The creature in a panic attacked Samus and nearly drained her of her life, but then it recognized her as its mother and broke off, screeching in confusion and sorrow. While Mother Brain, now augmented with a reptilian-like body, engaged Samus in this climactic fight. Overpowered by Mother Brain's lethal assaults, Samus was on the brink of death when the Metroid hatchling heroically intervened. Her adopted child latched onto Mother Brain, siphoning the biomechanical monster's energy and transferring it to Samus. Mother Brain retaliated with a deadly beam, mortally wounding the brave hatchling, and while Samus was reinvigorated, Mother Brain retaliated with a deadly beam attack, which would mortally wound the brave hatchling. In a moment so devastating it may have only been surpassed by the deaths of her own parents, Samus watched as this baby Metroid screeched and died in front of her, dissolving into lifeless particles. But empowered by its bravery and enraged at this fate, she rose with a vengeance and unleashed an advanced weapon, the Hyper Beam, utterly annihilating Mother Brain once and for all. With Mother Brain's defeat, Zebes began to self-destruct, as the pirates likely set a failsafe or just the planet's ancient power systems went critical from the enormous energy of the Hyper Beam. Samus sprinted through the collapsing tunnels to her gunship, narrowly escaping as planet Zebes exploded in a cataclysm of fire. The entire base, along with any cloned Metroids, were destroyed, and the threat of Mother Brain was finally ended. But Samus knew that the infant's sacrifice had saved her life and the galaxy, but also all of this could have been avoided if she had just killed it originally. She had to struggle with the dark idea that even if the Metroid could be peaceful, it was simply too powerful, and it would always be enticing to the enormous dark forces spread throughout the galaxy. But also with this destruction, this era of space pirate conflicts centered on that world also came to a decisive close. In the wake of Super Metroid, Samus was left emotionally scarred by the loss of the baby and the traumatic destruction of her childhood planet Zebes. And sometime later, she undergoes a debriefing and recovery period.
And the explosion that followed destroyed planet Zebes, along with the remains of Mother Brain, the space pirates, and my long-standing nemesis, Ridley, and the baby.
Federation scientists even removed residue Metroid hatchling cells, taking them off her power suit and putting them under analysis. But it wasn't long before another mission. In Metroid Other M from 2010, Samus responds to a mysterious distress signal, Baby's Cry, coming from a seemingly abandoned Federation vessel known as the Bottle Ship. By coincidence or fate, on board she encounters the 7th Platoon of the Galactic Federation Army, led by Commander Adam Malkovich, Samus's former commanding officer and mentor. Their reunion is tense given Samus's independent status.
The word he so obviously chose, outsider, pierced my heart.
But she agrees to cooperate under Adam's command for the duration of this investigation, and they quickly rekindle their old rapport. They eventually uncover a horrifying secret. The ship was a clandestine Federation research outpost engaged in illegal bioweapons experiments. They find evidence that the Federation had cloned Metroids in captivity, even creating specialized Metroids with no vulnerability to cold, removing their traditional weakness to ice-based weaponry. And a lifelike android AI named MB, for Melissa Bergman, also shared initials with and was modeled after Mother Brain. It was MB that was controlling these illegal experiments. And among the specimens on board, Samus discovers a clone of Ridley grown from a cell sample, and that past trauma comes flooding back. While the bottle ship quickly becomes a battleground as creatures escape containment, and the shadowy traitor, the Deleter, within the 7 platoons starts assassinating his comrades to cover up the project. As the situation deteriorates, Samus learns that the Federation originally planned to weaponize the Metroids on the bottle ship, a plan now spiraling out of control.
We developed an AI program that would reproduce Mother Brain's thought processes. We called it MB.
But it was just a program. It wasn't the mother herself.
MB evolved as it communicated with the Metroids. It appears as though it began to become self-aware, much like the original Mother Brain.
Adam takes it upon himself to prevent a galaxy-wide disaster, and he sacrifices himself.
No objections. Right, lady?
Locking himself in a sector housing the Metroid breeding program, and triggers the self-destruct for that sector, freezing and destroying all the Metroids, including the infant Queen Metroid, before they can escape. Samus is left stunned and broken, as this man, the closest thing she had to a father figure, he would sacrifice himself to save others, just like her actual dad did all those years ago. She knew they did the right thing and that they were heroes, but it still tore her to pieces. With Adam gone, Samus presses on to exterminate the remaining threats, and deep in the ship's biolab, she encounters a fully grown Queen Metroid, presumably another product of the experiment. While the battle is intense, she does ultimately destroy the Queen, wiping out the last Metroid specimens on the ship.
What you met was MB. She's an android. She was created with the intellectual data of Mother Brain and consequently developed Mother Brain's consciousness as well.
What? The Federation's foolish person who sabotaged the system to stop MB's rampage and sent out the distress call had to be the person standing before me. It had to be Madeline Bergman.
MB was the artificial intelligence originally developed to regenerate and control space pirate special forces. Because we wanted it to control these special forces through telepathy, we were forced to model its infrastructure after Mother Brain. At that time, MB didn't have a human form. Before long, we started to see the viability of creating Metroid clones. Once we did, MB started to take on her current shape.
But why?
Because we needed the first Metroid hatchling to recognize MB as its mother, she had to take on the form of a living thing. With that as our theoretical basis, we were able to create the ideal relationship with the Metroid. One that wasn't based on dominance or control.
They found the perfect means of control and started propagating Metroids in Sector 0. At the same time, they were conducting genetic manipulation experiments to create unfreezable Metroids. Apparently, the queen I met earlier was the first of these propagated Metroids. Abandoned and hunted by that same Madeline, MB telepathically commanded the Special Forces to revolt. The facility fell into complete chaos and suffered widespread damage.
MB was trying to get revenge on the Federation Army, and on us. It's possible all humans have become the target of her hatred.
Samus has a final, somber moment recovering Adam's helmet, a keepsake of her fallen friend, before the battleship is completely destroyed by the Federation to erase all evidence of their illicit projects. But despite the Federation's attempts at secrecy, the catastrophic events on the bottle ship did eventually become known, explaining how certain creatures from Zebes, like Zebesian space pirates and a Ridley corpse, ended up in Federation labs later. But the most profound consequence was the Federation's renewed interest in Metroids and other related biotech, an interest that would nearly lead to ruin in the next chapter of Samus's journey. In Metroid Fusion from 2002, Samus returns to the planet SR388 on a routine escort mission, acting as a security advisor for a research team with biologic space laboratories. On the surface, Samus is suddenly attacked by an innocuous-looking life form. Unbeknownst to her, this creature is host to an X-parasite, the very organism the Chozo had created Metroids to destroy. With Metroids now extinct, the parasitic X had proliferated on SR388. The parasite infects Samus through her power suit, and she was rapidly deteriorating. She manages to get back to her gunship, but soon loses consciousness. In space, her ship drifts until Federation emergency teams recover her. But by then, the X-parasite infection has spread through her nervous system and melded with pieces of her power suit, which cannot be surgically removed. Many believe she could die any minute, and so one of the doctors deployed an experimental cure, a Metroid vaccine created from the cells of the baby Metroid, this last preserved source of Metroid DNA. This vaccine does successfully save Samus's life by absorbing the X within her, but the price is permanent. Large portions of her power suit are removed, creating the distinctive blue and yellow fusion suit, and Samus's biology is forever altered. She has now effectively inherited Metroid traits, like the ability to absorb X-parasites for energy. She is now a synthesis of 3 different species, human, Chozo, and Metroid. And there is some beauty here that in preserving the baby's life, even after its own death, posthumously the Metroid baby is able to give birth to Samus's second life, while also fulfilling the role of its own species and the will of its creator, the Chozo, and that Samus is now equipped to fight the X directly. And shortly after recovering, she is sent to investigate a crisis at the BSL research station, which had brought her infected power suit remnants, now called the SAX, aboard for analysis. The station orbiting SR388 had gone unexpectedly silent, and upon arrival, Samus learns that the X-parasite from her suit pieces not only survived, but multiplied, infecting many creatures in the station's habitats, and even reconstructing a deadly mimic of Samus herself. the SAX, an exact copy of Samus at full power suit strength. This parasitic doppelganger roams the station, and Samus, in her weakened fusion state, must avoid direct confrontation with it, at least initially. Guided by a Federation AI, nicknamed Adam for how similar it was to her former mentor, Samus navigates the BSL sectors, containing outbreaks and absorbing X parasites to regain some of her abilities. But along the way, she makes a shocking discovery in a restricted lab. The Federation had secretly been breeding Metroids in captivity on the station, presumably using the cell cultures from SR-388, and perhaps inspired by knowledge gleaned from the bottle ship incident. But SAX causes an explosion that releases the captive Metroids. Samus barely escapes as the lab is jettisoned into space, and it becomes clear that the top Federation officials intended to weaponize both Metroids and the X, and they just see her current situation as an opportunity to capture the SAX parasite for study, seeing all of them as just mere weapons, tools for securing their own power. The AI Adam initially follows the Federation's secret orders to contain Samus and preserve the X parasites. As the infestation worsens, multiple SAX parasites replicate. Samus even encounters a station swarming with them, where she eliminates at least 10. But then she realizes that if the X parasites reach galactic civilization, they would cause an unstoppable pandemic. And so she resolves to destroy the space station and all X on board. Pleading with the AI Adam triggers a breakthrough, and the AI reveals that it had indeed integrated the personality of Adam Malkovich. Samus pleads with the AI as if it was her old friend, and Adam does agree that X must be eliminated at all costs. It assists her in overloading the station's engines, and Samus sets the BSL station on a collision course with SR-388 itself, planning to destroy the X parasites on the station and wipe out any remaining X on the planet below in this one decisive blow. As alarms blare and the station's self-destruct countdown begins, Samus is confronted by an Omega Metroid, one of the few that had escaped the lab destruction. Weakened from prior battles, Samus is at the mercy of the Omega Metroid's attacks, and that's when one of the SAX parasites appears, the X that had mimicked Samus. Driven by either self-preservation or just pure instinct, the X sees the Metroid as the main threat, but when it attacks, it is merely swatted aside and reverts to its core X form. Seizing this opportunity, Samus absorbs the SAX, which gives her full power and restores her Ice Beam. Now at full strength, Samus defeats the Omega Metroid with a barrage of ice and missile attacks. With no time to spare, she races back to her gunship and escapes just as the BSL station plunges into SR-388, obliterating the planet and presumably every remaining trace of the X-parasite within it. But this move would forever embitter the Federation, whose leadership were furious at the loss of this planet and the loss of all this research. They may even wish to come up with some pretense to arrest her, just make up some other charges stemming from her life as a bounty hunter. But she does have the AI Adam's support. More time would go by, and this is the longest stretch where the leadership believed that both the Metroids and X-parasites were completely eliminated. But this was short-lived. Metroid Dread from 2021 picks up an unspecified time after Fusion, with the Federation receiving a startling video transmission from an unknown sender, containing footage of an X-parasite alive in the wild. The transmission is traced to a remote, unexplored planet named ZDR, and in response, the Federation dispatches 7 advanced EMMI robots, extraplanetary multiform mobile identifiers. These are top-of-the-line research automatons, each virtually indestructible and equipped to neutralize parasitic organisms. Soon after deployment, though, contact with the ME unit is lost, and when the Federation realized just how dire this could be, they call on Samus. With the loss of the Metroids, she is the only known being immune to the X infection. She arrives at planet ZDR via her gunship and descends alone into the depths of a Chozo-made facility. Almost immediately, she is ambushed by a mysterious armored Chozo warrior. Incredibly, this is a living Chozo in power armor, and the foe easily overpowers Samus in this dramatic battle, draining her energy and leaving her unconscious. When she awakens, stripped of most of her abilities, she begins a long ascent back to the surface, and as she traverses various regions from the magma-flooded Kateris to the lush forests of Gavaron and many others, she systematically hunts the rogue Emmys, which have been reprogrammed to see Samus herself as the target. One by one, Samus uses the Central Unit Power Source's Chozo supercomputers reminiscent of Mother Brain in order to gain temporary Omega Beam weapons and dismantle each rampaging Emmy. Each destroyed Emmy yields new abilities, helping her progress further. And throughout this journey, Samus interfaces periodically with a computer network that she believes to be her own ship's AI, Adam. It keeps on warning her to keep an eye out for that Chozo warrior. Deeper into ZDR, she makes a groundbreaking discovery, encountering a friendly Chozo scientist named Quiet Robe, who surrenders peacefully and shares ZDR's dark secrets. He explains that it is home to 2 Chozo tribes, his own Thoha tribe, scientists and custodians like the ones from SR388, and the warlike Mawkin. Ravenbeak, the leader of the Mawkin, is the very Chozo warlord who attacked the SR388 colony years ago, long before Samus was even born, and who slaughtered the Thoha there. Remember, that was what started this entire story. After SR388, Ravenbeak returned to ZDR with a plan to use Metroids as a weapon to rule the galaxy. But when Samus eradicated the Metroids, Ravenbeak finally had to give up hope of having the super weapon. But to get around this, he orchestrated events to lure Samus to ZDR. It was Ravenbeak who sent the X-Parasite video to the Federation, and then hijacked the Emmy robots, intending to capture Samus. Ravenbeak's goal is to extract the Metroid DNA that now resides in her, and clone a new army of Metroids that would all imprint to him and be under his control. And Quiet Robe reveals another startling detail, that Samus's Chozo infusion when she was 3 included DNA from both tribes. Not only Thoha DNA, from Old Bird or Grey Voice, but also Mawkin DNA from Ravenbeak himself. There was even the idea that Ravenbeak sees her as a worthy heir for his plans, that Samus could one day be the greatest warlord, controlling an endless Metroid army. Samus stays stoic, seemingly unfazed by this revelation, but becomes even more resolved to stop Ravenbeak. But before more can be discussed, a robotic Chozo soldier, one of Ravenbeak's unique creations, suddenly appears and assassinates Quiet Robe in front of Samus. Pursuing this attacker and continuing her ascent, she discovers that Ravenbeak was keeping X-Parasites on ZDR in a containment area called Alune. And while she's investigating this, Ravenbeak remotely releases the containment, unleashing the X-Parasites across the planet's ecosystem. Creatures and soldiers everywhere begin to be affected, creating new deadly adversaries for Samus to fight. While herself, due to her Metroid-enhanced biology, is immune to being possessed by the X, and instead is empowered by them, absorbing and using them to recharge like in Fusion. As she battles the last of the hostile Emmys, something very odd happens. During this life-and-death struggle, she manifests a strange new power, briefly entering a glowing state and draining energy from this enemy. It's an ability reminiscent of the Metroid's energy-draining attack. This occurs more when Samus defeats the final Emmy, prompting her to realize that her Metroid powers are awakening inside her. And while this seems useful, Samus worries if she will become like the Metroid, this devouring enemy that the Chozo so feared. At last, Samus reaches Itorash, Ravenbeak's floating fortress high above ZDR. And inside the throne room, she confronts the man himself. The Chozo warlord reveals the full extent of his plot. He had been masquerading as the Adam AI via Samus's comm uplinks all along, manipulating her throughout her ZDR journey. His goal was to push her to her physical limits, hoping to trigger her latent Metroid abilities. And now seeing that Samus had indeed begun to awaken as a Metroid, Ravenbeak intends to clone her and isolate this powerful Metroid DNA, creating an unstoppable army under his command. He praises her physical prowess, but notes that it's his own warrior DNA that flows in her. And again, this troubles her to the core. She is genetically influenced by things like Metroid and Ravenbeak. She worries about becoming like this monster. And she attacks Ravenbeak with everything she has, but he initially overwhelms her. And when he is about to deal a finishing blow, Samus's fury and rage at her life full of so many devastating losses finally triggers the full Metroid transformation. Her power suit transforms into the Metroid suit, and Samus herself gains the Metroid's energy-absorbing power to an unprecedented degree. She is now essentially a human Metroid, and she lunges at Ravenbeak, draining him of his energy, but also inadvertently siphoning energy from Itorash's systems, causing the entire fortress to fall out of the sky. Ravenbeak is utterly helpless and at Samus's mercy, and at that moment an X-parasite swoops in and infects Ravenbeak, mutating him into a grotesque creature dubbed Ravenbeak X. And though this fight would be intense, she does destroy it, ending this long-lasting Chozo threat, which had plagued the galaxy since before she was born. But Samus's rampage had catastrophic side effects. The destruction of the forest triggers a planetary chain reaction. The world itself seems to self-destruct, just like Zebes once did. Samus rushes to her gunship on the surface, racing against time as explosions rock this planet. But there's a new complication. Samus's Metroid powers have grown so intense that when she reaches her ship, she cannot interface with it. In her Metroid form, any energy source she touches, she will absorb. If she tries to pilot the ship, she would drain its power, leaving her stuck on this exploding world. But it's at this time that an unlikely savior intervenes. The X-parasite that had infected Quiet Robe did not overtake his mind and personality, and this mostly intact being arrives at Samus's ship. This Quiet Robe X willingly approaches Samus and allows her to absorb it. By doing so, Quiet Robe's Thoha influence helps restore Samus's human consciousness and suppress the uncontrollable Metroid energy, just as the Thoha Chozo could pacify Metroid. If you remember in the very beginning, the odd detail that the warrior Chozo were jealous of is that the Thoha Chozo could pacify Metroids, and this ability would express itself just in time to save her life. Samus's suit reverts to normal, and the deadly energy-draining aura subsides. In a final salute, Quiet Robe X gives his life to save Samus, in a way completing their service to Samus, from adopting that 3-year-old and ensuring that she would become the galaxy's savior. Now back in control, Samus powers up her gunship and escapes CDR just as the planet detonates, wiping out all remaining X-parasites on this world in one grand explosion. As she flies away, she thinks about how this was the end of an era. This should be the destruction of the last known X-parasites, and Ravenbeak's rogue Chozo faction had been eliminated, but she carries in her very cells. Her body is the legacy of the Metroids. She seems stabilized by Quiet Robe's intervention, but if she is the last Metroid, how does that play with the Federation's standing orders regarding Metroids, which had been to shoot on sight? This could put Samus in danger. In any powerful force, from some new pirate faction all the way up to corrupt people in the Federation, they would see her as the ultimate weapon, to be twisted and manipulated to serve their evil plans. It's a fitting conclusion to what Sakamoto has described as a 5-part saga of the 2D Metroid series. Samus's journey from orphan child on K2L to the living embodiment of Chozo's most powerful creation has come full circle. What lies ahead is uncertain, but what is clear is that Samus Aran remains the greatest protector of the galaxy. Born from incredibly brave humans, infused with the teachings of Chozo warrior wisdom, and the Metroid power itself. And thus concludes the complete story of the Metroid universe, at least for now. If you made it this far, please hit that like button. It really is the best way to help me out. It's free and I could use your help. But most important of all, remember, don't blame an alien baby for the sins of its species. And may your suit stay fully powered.